Is that with so many electronic and information-based systems coming along, we're going to see a decreasing need or a decrease in the rate of increase in classroom space and things like that. It's going to redefine parts of universities just like libraries have already been redefined.
Can you share the price tag?
$2.86 billion.
Okay, so that's, well, I don't want to say, but I mean, you're not talking about funding all of that in the next biennium, are you?
Certainly can.
Oh, you can, okay. All right.
Yeah, the cash is there. I don't know if all the cash can be expended
Right.
in the next biennium, but yes, we can do it between rainy day funds and cash available. Yeah, we can fund
So that would be a source of the funding, the rainy day funds, in your opinion?
That would be my suggestion.
Sure. Chairman Aycock, thoughts?
We are presently, this is approximates now, we're presently recovering about 0.5% on state funds on deposit. And we're presently paying about 4%, figures I've been told, for our debt service. It seems like a fiscally conservative thing to me to either use cash to buy down debt or to make buildings or some other, to let that money sit there and draw essentially no interest while we're paying interest, just doesn't seem like a smart move to me. I know that's a controversial deal politically.
Should we cap the rainy day fund, Chairman Murphy?
Well, I mean,
Lower, I know, but I mean,
yeah.
lower than what it's projected to grow to. I mean, isn't $8 billion enough in the rainy day fund?
It probably is, but I don't have a problem with getting over that as long as we do some good things with it. We have the option, as Senator Selleck said, it's sitting there and it can't be used, and we just have to vote it out and make that use of it. I think, Jimmy, on your point about the interest rate differential is just sort of a duh.
I hate paying interest.
But I will tell you, my constituents believe, and I don't know if yours do, they think Texas, oh, we're still pay as you go. And you kind of go, well, yeah,
Not really.
no, not really. And it's billions of not really. Well, one thing I want to mention was, Senator Selleck was mentioning sort of the metrics by which you measure things. And I just want to kind of, talk about graduation rates, for instance. I just want to kind of wave a yellow flag in terms of those metrics. We as business people, we want to use those and they make a lot of sense. I used to serve on the board of the community colleges in Houston. And one of the things we found was our graduation rate from our Cisco networking training program was at about 0. And we were just going, oh, this is terrible. These people must be doing an awful job. Actually, it was the opposite. As soon as they got about halfway through the program, they were hired. And they were making more money than their professor made. So sometimes you have to look at a little bit of context on these things and see, what would be the appropriate measure. And in that case, I would suggest it be something like, working in the field. That they're employed, not working in the field. Clear about that, sir. But I think we need to be looking at
Field of endeavor.
Mine is an agricultural district, so you gotta be clear.
I appreciate that. But no, I just think it's important we talk about those things. When we want to drill down and measure and hold accountable, that we do so with meaningful factors.
I'd like to point out where the state of Texas is using profoundly bad business practices, and Jimmy Don alluded to it. We were essentially taking the money in the rainy day fund and putting it in a mattress.
Yeah.
Not in the 21st century, you don't do that. And I think where I would prefer the limit be on the rainy day fund is $45 billion. I'd turn that over to you, Timco, tomorrow and start making our money work for us.
Why don't we do that?
Well, that's the
I mean, aren't you powerful state senator? Why? And I think can we get them to change their way of thinking and do that?
Yeah, I think we can. I came with this comptroller, changed the way of thinking. They were talking, we had somebody from the comptroller at our hearing in the finance committee, and he talked about investment committee, and I said, if you put the money in a mattress, what is it you need the investment committee for?
Right.
You just need somebody to keep spraying fireproof stuff on the mattress, basically.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a change in thinking there.
Very good. We'd like to see. So we're talking about money. Let's talk about school finance for a minute. Obviously, I think that there's a consensus that not a whole lot's going to be done on this during this session on school finance because of the looming decision from the Texas Supreme Court. Is that you see that as a consensus, Chairman Aycock?
If you'd asked me that a few weeks ago, I'd have said definitely. I'm less certain of that now.
Okay.
There's some, as you know, there have been some meetings and discussions, and there's some modeling taking place, and I'm cautiously interested in the possibility of doing some work around the present formula.
Okay.
I think it's clear that anything structural, you know, I introduced that 38 page bill, it's not gonna go anywhere.
I did read it.
You ready?
I'm waiting for the movie to come out.
I think structurally.
Jim, why don't you tell them what your bill talked about, because I think it was pretty novel.
I will in a minute, but structurally, I don't think we're gonna make any big changes during the time while we're waiting for the Supreme Court decision. And once we get that Supreme Court decision, we may make some structural decisions that are somewhat different. Basically, the little 37 page bill I did says we consolidate tax bases as a strategy to even out the difference in tax.
Can we ever get to a equalization, an equity that is going to last for more than 6 months unless we go to a statewide property tax system?
Well, I think my bill does that.
I should have Bill on Jimmy Don's desk in the next 2 weeks that's going to address that by addressing the yield on what we call the copper pennies. The additional funding in the first tier that goes, that will address equity substantively, it will address yield, obviously, and it's also going to address recapture and lessen that, which is a big deal in the state of Texas now, particularly in oil and gas and housetop districts.
Austin's a little spun up about that.
They're a little spun up, yeah, they are kind of spun up about it, but it will address all of that. Is it going to be the solution that's going to last us for all time? Probably not. Will it make a difference? Interesting thing about that court decision is what it does not say. Because while it says our current system is inadequate, they don't tell us what is adequate. And at the same time,
$2,000 per student per year more, that's what Judge Dietz said was adequate, I believe. I think he said that.
yeah, I don't think that he can come up with necessarily with an appropriation that will do that.
Right.
At the same time, that they took no exception to the formulas. Our formulas are not unconstitutional, it's just simply funding levels. And so if it's 2,000 more per student, my guess that would be, that'd be billions of dollars. But I think we'll continue to contest that because what we see in a lot of places, we spend a lot less than Washington D.C. schools and their performance is terrible. We have some school districts here that have overwhelmingly, the poor school districts, chapter 42 districts, have large populations and free and reduced price lunch and limited English proficiency like Forest, San Juan, Alamo, and yet their performance is extraordinary.
Yep, absolutely.
And so we go from there.
Chairman Murphy,
Yeah,
comments on school finance?
Sure, just a thought on that, and that is that Judge Dietz, who's ruled before, has been overruled before. And so we're all kind of playing this game of pin the tail of the donkey, trying to figure out exactly where the ruling's going to come down. And I'm less optimistic than my colleagues about things occurring with that shadow over our head. But changing some formulas so that people could have local discretion in setting tax rates would be fantastic and something my constituents would love to see.
All right, very good.
I'm gonna get him off the hot spot. His staffer's about to go nuts on him.
I know, I understand. Well, you need to leave us,
We start
Senator?
that meeting, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator. Let's give a round of applause. Senator, unfortunately, under the rules, you have to be present to win the contest, so you'll be ineligible, but I'll tell you the results later on. Thanks, Senator.
I'll bring you your trophy.
Okay, I guess we have a few more minutes. Is that right, Aaron? What's your? Yeah. Okay. I'd like to open it up to the audience. If there are questions in the audience, I'm the one who gives the speeches, so that's the only thing I would say about your questions. So, does anyone in the room have a question for one of our panelists this morning? Yes, sir. Chairman Phelps.
Yeah, what are your understanding about the difference in education funding with the two budgets and without?
I haven't really looked at it that close. I think there's, of course, the approach the House took was to have that rider with $2 billion in it, undesignated, so to speak. What that has done, in actual fact, is set off every hand in Texas reaching for some of that money.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of things. We've got early childhood, we've got the counselor situations, we've got all sorts of teacher quality issues we want to talk about. reading academies, math academies. Everybody's got an idea of spending it around that $2 billion of undesignated money so far. The House has sort of set up for education. It sort of set off the feeding frenzy, to tell you the truth.
So then, I mean, I thought that when they were gonna, the concept put those back to the formula.
Well, that's the other thing is, do you put it back in basic allotment at the bottom of the formula? And do you put it all back in basic allotment at the bottom of the formula? Do you put part of it back? Don't know.
Where did that $2 billion come from?
It was property tax values that were realized as a savings to the state. Remember, the property taxes raise more money. The state has to pay less than the state share. So it netted about 4.5 billion, as I recall, something like that, because of increased property values. And the House elected to plow most of that back into the education for which those taxes were paid. Instead, they use that money in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the increase in the property values have created a surplus, if you will, from the state's perspective. And rather than taking that $2 billion and spending it on something else, the budget is filed, keeps it into education,
So the House budget.
and let the fight begin as, yeah, in the House, sir. Let the fight begin as to how that money should be spent.
Well, it's set off an interesting discussion already because it's a lot of money.
Chairman Phillips, Chairman Murphy, excuse me, the governor has talked about, I think, $700 million roughly, pre-K through third grade. Obviously, that would take a third of that money. What are your thoughts on how that money should be spent? What are your thoughts on what the governor's talking about?
You know, absent knowing what those other items might be that would mark up that $2 billion, I think it sounds like there's room to actually do that. It really does. The question becomes, in my mind, I think Chairman Phillips did make a good point, is so the Senate number in the formula may account for all those same things, or are all those things additional to? And does our $2 billion add to the Senate side, and all of a sudden we get that ratcheting effect between House and Senate budgets where we pick, you know, by line item who's higher in every one, and all of a sudden you end up with a budget that's billions more than either one started out at. And that's a concern I have, so we have to sort of find out what each one breaks down their budget, and we're not quite there yet.
I also want to point out, we've been joined by the chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission, Andre Alcantar.
I think he had to leave.
Oh, he had to leave, okay. And Representative Blanco, is he still here?
No,
He just left.
Okay, sorry, I was a little late on the uptake on that one, so. Other questions from the audience or participants this morning? Okay, well, let's talk about accountability for a minute. As I understand it, the present system is that 90% of our 90% of the districts or 90% of the campuses are meeting standards, whatever that means. And only 8.5% of our campuses, quote, need improvement, whatever that means. Is that system driving increased academic performance on the part of our local schools? What could we do, what should we do about having a public school accountability system that will inform the general public, not the educators, what's going on in their kids' schools, and will also drive increased academic performance?
Well, the most interesting number in the last few weeks has been that we're down to less than 80 campuses statewide that are what we call 2-year needs improvement or more.
Right.
And I think a lot of our focus in our committee will be on what we do with those most troubled campuses. I think.
But isn't that number deceptively low in terms of what's going on out there?
No, remember that's 2 years or more.
Okay.
A lot of what we're seeing is a lot of schools will go needs improvement or academic unacceptable, whatever term you're going to use, and they will do things in intervening ways that bring those students back into a better performance, and that's actually working and helping quite a bit. What's happening that's troubling is that we have so many, 80 campuses is no small number of folks that have been more than 2 years, and some of those are as long as 5 and 6 and 7 years. I think of one in Central Texas that's 7 years in the same campus. Lots has been tried and hasn't really moved that needle at all. And that's very troubling, and I think our committee will look a lot at what we're going to try to intervene in those most troubled campuses.
what about, you know, what